Welcome to the Gamescape, everybody. My name is Jeric, and today we are in Chaos Gate Daemonhunters, and this is going to be my top 10 tips for tactical combat for new players who are new to the game. In this episode, we're going to be taking a look at just the tactical combat with the Marines, the Knights on the ground, and fighting demons and cultists and whatever. I will do another video at some point for the strategic layer of the game. I wanted to just focus on combat for this one. So without any further ado, let's jump right into this with our first tip. Tip number one is about out of combat movement and the concept of the start of combat. And I want to show you guys this in case you don't know that it's there. If you go into your escape menu and you go to settings, over here there's a codex. And there's 3 sections of this codex that talk about a lot of the different concepts in the game. Armor, crit vulnerability, etc. Down here we've got your boons and your afflictions. These are all the different things that can happen to your soldiers and to your crew aboard the Baleful Edict, your ship. And then down here we've got this one called key concepts, and there's quite a few things in here. It talks about action points, corruption, all kinds of things. The one that we're interested in is one called start of combat for this particular tip. Start of combat is whenever discovering enemy units while not already engaged in combat, all knights are immediately restored to 3 action points. Knights also regain their action points and automatically reload ranged weapons once all currently active enemies have been eliminated. Okay, so this is kind of an important concept because this isn't normal in a lot of games like this. Like when you're playing games like XCOM or Phoenix Point or, you know, some of those other types of games that are similar to this one, when you discover an enemy group, they get their scramble turn and then you just have to pick up right where you were. And so your guys might be kind of in bad shape. They might be about out of action points or whatever. In this one, you kind of go back to full action points and you're ready to start fighting immediately. Now that's going to inform how we move just a little bit here. So let's take, for instance, let's just say we're not being super careful and we're going to advance our guy up to his full movement up here. Okay, because we're moving, we want to cover some ground, we're a long way from our objective, and there we go. All of a sudden we've wandered into an enemy patrol that we didn't even know was there. They're going to do their scramble turn as they always do. And they're going to start doing their defenses and they're going to get their overwatches set up. We're just waiting for them to finish that real quick here. Okay, so they're in position, they're ready to fight. Okay, buffing themselves up. Here we go.
Prepare to engage.
So we, however, if we look at this, have a bit of a problem. 3 of our knights are out of position completely. They are nowhere near the fight, and they're going to have to spend their entire first turn pretty much just moving up, getting into position to fight, right? I mean, with our Purgator here, you know, he can run up, but he's fairly short range, so he's going to have to get into cover. And then we're going to have to get the rest of these guys up here. The only one that's really in a position to do anything is our Apothecary. And in this particular case, you know, the Apothecary, he can fight, but he's not necessarily our strongest fighter, right? And so we've kind of put ourselves in a bad spot here where we're going to move, we're maybe going to do a little bit of damage. We might be able to target this thing and do a little bit of area damage, or this particular barrel or whatever. There's an explosive here. I don't think we can even see it from where we're at. So we're just not in a good spot. You know, they've got all of their defenses up already. And, you know, we move into any of these red zones, we're going to take damage. And he's just up there by himself. And these guys are just going to be moving up. Now, one of the things that can prevent this is if we're a lot more careful about how we advance, right? So what we did, this guy just kind of went speeding off by himself, left everybody else behind, and then he tripped up these guys and they came in and start of combat began. So let's take a look at this again with our a little bit more measured of an approach, and let's see if we can do just a little bit better. Okay, so we're here, we're back right exactly where we were when we started. And so what I like to do, instead of sending guys flying forward all by themselves, I like to take, you know, my rearmost guys from the direction that I'm traveling, and I like to move them up maybe 1 or 2 action points worth at a time. And this is okay in this game because this is not a game where you get 1 move and then 1 action and you're done, right? You got 3 action points. You can do whatever you want with them. and you can move and then fire and then move again or whatever, right? And so it doesn't hurt us to take just a little bit more measured of an approach, and we can just move up. We don't even really have to worry about staying in cover at this point, because if we trip anybody, which we may, we're going to have a chance. They're going to get their scramble turn, and then we're going to start combat, and we're going to have our first action here. So now 3 of our guys are forward, so our rear guy, our last guy, he can afford to move up like 2, right? So we can, and also pay attention to who we're moving here, right? This is our interceptor. The first guy that we moved up was our Justicar, or our tank. And so our apothecary still out in front, but he was kind of the last one to move up, right? And so we kind of want to scout with our heavier combat units oftentimes. So we're going to move our interceptor up to here. Okay, now
we will find
instead of running into them like our previous guy did, he got close enough to detect them without setting them off. And so now we know where they are, and we can go ahead and we can move our guys up, and we can take some advantage by pre-positioning everybody at least as far as this guy. We know we can get at least that far, and so we can maybe even push a little farther if we're careful about our line of sight. But what we want to do is we want to, at this point, kind of move up as best we can without blocking everybody else. So we pretty safe moving over to here probably. Let's keep him in cover just in case, because you never know exactly when they're going to kick off, but you can make some pretty good educated guesses as to when it's going to happen. And this is another thing. I'm going to actually move up here and save an action point, because this is going to lead us right into our second tactical tip here. So let's get these guys up here, and they're in a good spot. So now we're ready to move in. Everybody, once these guys kick off, are going to be a lot closer, and they're going to be able to get into the fight. But I want to jump into tip number 2 real quick before we actually kick these guys off. So let's take just a spot of a break here, and I'll bring us right back in. Tip number 2 is about pre-buffing before you go into combat rounds or kickoff start of combat. So this is going to pick up right exactly where we left off in tip 1. We've got our guys, they're kind of right on the edge. They've discovered this enemy squad up here, but we haven't kicked them off yet. And we still have an action point left on each one of our guys. And so we can use this time right now to do some kind of interesting things, right? So first of all, we have our apothecary here who can give the warp speed biomancy to our interceptor and buff up his ability to do combat. So we're going to do that real quick. Everybody here's got an action point left, so we're going to buff him up. For our Justicar, oh, he got his extra action point back anyway, so that's even better. These are some pretty advanced soldiers. Your guys may not be this tough yet, but the concept still applies. So the Justicar, we're going to go ahead and use his last action point to bring his Aegis shield up. Okay, so we don't need to warp charge that probably. We're going to probably be okay. And then we're going to have our interceptor take his Aegis shield and put it up as well. Okay, and then let's just say, you know, we didn't get our extra action point back, and our apothecary is even out of actions right now. We're still okay, because we've got our last guy here. He's got 1 action point left, and he can get up into cover, or he can even just move up here, and he can, now that everybody's pre-buffed, spring the trap. Here we go. Here they come. They're going to get their scramble turn again, just like last time. But this time, you're going to notice once they're all done moving around and setting up all of their, you know, overwatches and defenses and stuff like that, you're going to notice that our guys are in a much, much better position now to start this fight than they were previously. They're all together. They're all within a reasonable range of these guys. And now, not only that, they're all buffed up as they enter combat. These guys have their shields up. He's got warp speed biomancy on him. And so he is especially ready to get in there and do some work. Our Purgator is here. He's ready. So he can get in here even, and he can like even move clear up to here. If we move to there, we're going to take the damage. But if we move to here, we're going to be okay. We could even probably stay... Yeah, we'll move to here just as a quick example. So he can do this. And then he can do his sanctified kill zone on everybody up here. Okay, he can get just about everybody, not quite. So this is going to break some armor, and this is going to make them all vulnerable, and this is going to set us up in a much nicer position to start combat now. Now, why does it matter, right? Why does it matter if we spend a turn just moving up into cover and let them do their first turn, as opposed to being ready to go into this combat immediately? The answer to that has to do with the defenses in this game, or the lack thereof. And I'm going to get into that in the next tip. But the short version of it, just as a little preview, is the stronger your offense here, the better your guys are going to be at not taking damage. And so now, like I said, we've got everybody buffed up. You know, our interceptor's ready to go. He can just teleport right in here, and he can get to work on these guys, for instance. That's one of his action points, but he's in combat now, right? So he's still got 2 action points. He can get rid of this Overwatch. Okay, and he can even do something, you know, a little more crazy. If you happen to have teleport strike, for instance, you can come in here and you can soften all these guys up just like this. And you can land right next to this guy. Warp charge all that up. And you know, we're in really good shape now. You know, he can do another not astral aim, but he can just shoot his weapon. You know, he can fire into here. He can do a psychic onslaught and get all these guys. We're going to kill this guy. See how it's different when everybody's in range and they can do their work? There we go. Took out a couple of guys. Our guy gets to shoot. That's another extra ability he's got for being a little higher level, but you know, we're in really good position now. We can get our Justicar up in here and we can beat this guy down. And instead of having one guy and not even our strongest fighter in position to attack, we've pretty much now gotten to the point where we're up against only really one other. It's going to be 2 guys, I think, by the time we're done here, because we're going to be able to kill that guy right now with our apothecary from long range, and he's down. And even though we're just about out of turns at this point, you know, we're just about out of action points. Look at where we're at. He's buffed up. He's buffed up. We've got 2 guys left that are going to be a problem for us. And these guys are far enough back that even if they take just a little bit of damage, the damage is going to get reduced because of range. And I think we're in just a much better position now for taking this measured approach than we were for throwing our one guy out in front of everybody else and not, you know, having even a good frontline fighter. So these are the first couple of tips that I've got for you. Pre-buff before you go in and use that start of combat to your advantage. We're going to go ahead and move on to tip number 3 here in just a moment. But again, one more thing about this that's really kind of cool is that if we manage, let's say we manage to take these 2 guys down on this turn 2, which we're not going to on this particular fight, but if we had, we'd still be buffed up as we exit start of combat. You remember the definition of start of combat said you also gain all your action points back when all enemies are terminated. And so what we could theoretically do is, if we had managed to kill these 2 guys, we could still move up here and get ready to move in on the bloom spawn that happens to be back here. It'll have another group of guys protecting it. And if we did it well enough and we were fast enough, we would go in already buffed still. And that would be, you know, something that we would be able to do. So it didn't work out this time, and it's not real often that it does work out, but that is a possibility if the stars align and you happen to get really good kills on your initial assault there. If you happen to wipe everybody else out, you go out of combat still buffed for the next 3 action points, and if you happen to be able to get into combat again before those 3 action points are gone, everybody gets their 3 action points back again, and all your buffs are still in place. Make sure that you spend the time to pre-buff when you can before you start engaging guys that you already know are there. Tip number 3. The best defense in this game is really a good offense. And that is not to say that defenses are not important. They are, but you're going to do a lot better if you can overwhelm the enemy than if you try to slug it out with them. The reason why that is there is no missing in this game. If somebody shoots or somebody takes a swing at you, they're going to hit. Now, there are a couple of things that mitigate that. You know, you can parry melee attacks sometimes, some of your guys can, and full cover will mitigate the damage from, you know, any attack that's coming at you from that direction, as long as they're not more than a 45-degree angle off of you. Cover will reduce the damage that you take, even half cover, but they don't ever miss. What you don't want to do is get into a long, strung out fight with these guys where you're trying to go head to head with them and they're wearing you down and you're kind of wearing them down. The problem with that exchange is they've got unlimited forces, or their forces don't matter to them, I guess is more correct. They don't have any end to the number of cultists they can rally to their cause. We have 4 knights on the board, and so we can't afford to get into that kind of an attrition fight. And so what I've done here, I killed the last group of guys that we saw from the previous step, and I've moved up to this door. Beyond this door, we know there's a group of defenders, and we know the bloom spawn is here. And so I've pre-buffed our guys just like I did last time. Everybody here is down to 1 or 2 action points, but it doesn't matter because we're about to start combat again. And so the idea here is that we want to take these guys down as fast as we possibly can, because dead enemies don't shoot back at us, right? So how do we do that? Well, buffs and debuffs are a big factor. We've talked about pre-buffing your own soldiers as we come in, and we've done that. Everybody's got their Aegis shields up, and I have warp speed biomancy on our interceptor. But other things that we're going to want to consider is anything that we can do to the enemy that makes them take more damage is going to be good. In this particular group, the bright shining star of that is our Purgator and his Sanctified Kill Zone ability. What this does is it basically makes everybody vulnerable, and if you warp charge it, it strips 3 armor off of them as well permanently. It breaks 3 armor. And so this is extra damage that we're doing all the time with every hit that we do, whether it's a ranged attack or whether it's a melee attack. And so that's going to help us because that's going to just multiply the amount of damage that we do. Another one that we have, our interceptor, happens to have the ability to fire at a target that another soldier fires at, as long as he's in range, and he'll do 5 extra damage to that target. And not only can do it once, he can do it twice because of the way he's skilled up. And so that's something extra free damage basically that you get. And so we're going to go ahead and we're going to take another shot here. Like I said, we know the defenders are here. We know as soon as we break this door down, they're probably going to kick off, and we're going to go into start of combat. So we're just going to go ahead and we're going to lead with our interceptor, and we're going to get him in there because he can teleport. So even if they set up overwatches and stuff like that, those aren't going to affect him. Okay, so if we take a look here, we've got what, 3 Plague Marines, 1's a Terminator, and we've got a couple of bloom spawns protecting the bloom tree. And then we're going to get some reinforcements coming in next turn, it looks like. Okay.
Commander, we've made contact with the enemy.
Okay, so we are back up to 3 points on everybody here, and we can get in there. Now, the problem that we're going to face is this guy's got a whole thing set up now where if we enter this big red circle, he's going to come after us and hit us. So we probably want to do that. If we're going to do it, we want to do it with our Justicar. And he also, when he hits, does pin, so we're going to lose an action point as well. So in this case, our Justicar might end up taking a hit and not even really being able to do much. In fact, seeing as how our Apothecary is really probably our weakest of our fighters, we might want to send him in and have him break that for us. He's got his shield up, so he's going to take maybe a little bit of damage, but it's not going to be bad. So let's get him in there. Let's break that first. Right? There we go. And he's pinned. He's out of actions. He took like 1 point of damage there. It wasn't bad. Okay, but now we are in a position where we can get
what is your will?
Our Purgator in here with his kill zone, Now we're not going to be able to get everybody, but we can get 2 easy enough. We could get these guys over here too if we wanted to really move in. But the idea here is we want to kill as many guys as we can on this first turn before they really have a chance to do anything to us, right? Okay, so now they're vulnerable. We stripped some armor off both of them as well. So that's free damage that we just did for the most part. And now we can get our guy in here, and he's going to be able to do some work. So he can move here. Since he's got warp speed biomancy, his speed is increased. So we don't need to spend the point to teleport. We can just move up on this guy and get to work on him. So we can do that. We can do our force strike since we need to get this guy taken down. Idea, like I said, the idea, we take this guy down and we're going to be able to do some more work. Okay, another thing, like I said, area of effect attacks are going to be big helps. Okay, so we know that he's got one, and if we shoot this guy down here and we psychic onslaught, we're going to get this bloom spawn here as well. So that's probably worth thinking about. These guys are a little too far apart to do it, it looks like. But if we psychic onslaught here, yeah, we might blow up something down here potentially, but we're not going to get anybody else. So be careful with your AoEs. And so we probably would want to do this down here. The other thing we can do is we can get our Justicar in here and start working this guy over too. You know, maybe we're not sure we're going to kill him, so well, we'll work on him anyway. Get some force strikes in here.
Taste my fury.
Okay, hey, we got the crit here, so we can, you know, disable his plague shield. That'll stop him from setting up that ability that he used on us the first time. You know, we can kill him again because we just got the extra action point there. So that's a skill that he's got. Again, your soldiers might not be this advanced, but these concepts still hold. Okay, so now we still have 2 action points on this guy. So what we can do is we can get over here. We can do our teleport strike to here and to here. Oh, we can't reach that one. Can we reach him? We can reach him. And then end up down over this way somewhere. Warp charge that. No, we don't have enough to do the warp charge, but that's okay because we're going to do some damage here anyway. Gets the thing back. Okay, auto kill on the crit. That's going to let us get another action down to here. Can force strike him. No, still can't force strike him. Don't get will points back for killing Bloom Spawn, unfortunately. See, the better trick would have been, and I'd even messed that up a little bit, the better thing would have been to shoot him first with the Bloom Spawn in the area of effect, and that would have been fine. But you know what? We don't get this right every time, and it's okay that we don't get it right every time. The idea is the same, right? So we've gone in, we've been prepared, we had a very strong offense, and we just about killed everybody. There's that retaliatory strike that I was talking about. You know, he's going to do a little something. This guy over here is going to be able to hit us a little bit, but we've got our defenses up, and next turn both of these other Marines are going to be dead, and we're going to be able to start working on the Bloom Spawn, and, you know, whoever the reinforcements coming in, they're not even going to be a danger this turn probably. So that's the idea, right, is strong offense, kill as many guys as you can in that opening round. And you want to cultivate your soldiers' abilities to do that. That's area of effect attacks, like the teleport strike from the Interceptor. That is the Purgator's area of effect attack on the Psy Cannon. Or he can do the same thing with the Silencer as well, but it's a cone instead of it's a short range cone instead of a area of effect. And so we got more trouble coming in, and we have to deal with that, but they're out of position for this turn too, so it's not that big of a deal. If we're going to continue playing this, I'd clean up these last 2 Marines. I'd probably get that last Bloom Spawn that's hiding back there, and then we'd deal with these guys next turn, and it wouldn't be a big deal. So that's kind of the idea, though. Strong offense, area of effect attacks, grenades, Psy Cannons, flamethrowers, anything you can get more than one hit with. Also your buffs and debuffs on the enemy that stop them from doing damage to you or cause them to take more damage from you. All of those things are good abilities that you're going to want to cultivate in your Marines, in your Knights, so that you can have the most effective first rounds of combat possible. Tip number 4 is about using critical hits to your advantage. There are abilities that guarantee critical hits. Astral Aimed for ranged attacks and Hammerhand for melee attacks are the ones that are generally the guaranteed ones. If you look at the information on an enemy, you'll also see that they have a crit vulnerability. In this case, it's 15%. That's the chance that your Knights are going to crit unmodified by anything else. So 15% chance per hit that it's going to be a critical, which will do extra damage, and so on and so forth. It is really important to take a look at the abilities of your enemies too when you're engaging them. Like this guy here, for instance, he's a Plague Marine, but he's the one that has the hazard spray, the Plague Cannon. And so he's not actually that dangerous to you. He'll spread plague around all over the place, and if he gets close enough, he can do a little bit of damage to you, but it's only 2 damage and afflict plagued. It is armor piercing though, so you do have to watch that a little bit. But for the most part, these guys don't come after you and attack you directly unless you happen to be really close to them. So where we're at is, since the previous turn, I've gone ahead, I cleaned up the 2 Plague Marines that were left. We've got him over here, we killed the other Bloom Spawn. Everybody's done with their actions except for our Purgator, who still has, well, we got a couple guys with 1 action point left, but mostly we have these guys over here that are kind of in not a great position to do anything about these forces over here. And we have this guy here that's got a pretty nasty little charge shot that will do area blast, 14 range, 7 damage with knockback. So we kind of want to, we can't kill this guy, right? He's way too tough. He's got way too much armor. We're not going to kill him with the action points that we have left. It's just not going to happen. So what do? Well, we can mitigate some of the damage that he's going to be able to do by getting in and maybe getting a critical hit on him and see if we can take out his ranged weapon. So if you look really close, when you hover over a spot that you're going to move to, you see these lines coming out of that spot that show you exactly what you have line of sight to, right? So if we were to bring him to here, we wouldn't have line of sight to this guy here. We'd have it on these 2 guys, but not the big guy that we're interested in. So we do have to be a little bit careful about exactly where we position. Now, this over here, not a stellar spot because he's not really in cover at all. This is too far. Well, he could get to here. He still has line of sight. At least he has partial cover here. So he's got 1 action point left when we get to there. That's okay. That's all we need. We're going to get to here, and we're going to do an astral aim, and we're going to see what our options are here. So we take the astral aim. This is 3 of our 4 remaining will points, so you have to be careful and use this sparingly. So we're going to do this. Take the critical hit. See here, we got this option. We can disable his ranged weapon, okay? We could also do armor break 4 if we wanted to. Something interesting about armor break that I should have probably mentioned in the tip about doing maximum damage. Armor break happens before your weapon's damage is applied. And so if you've got an armor break weapon that does, let's say, 4 damage, and it's armor break 2, you're going to actually get 6 damage done to the guy as long as he's got 2 armor to break. And so in this case, we do the armor break 4, and it's going to, we're not doing much damage because of the actual range penalty that we have here. We could also inflict immobilized on this guy, but that's not going to help us because he's range 14 and our guys are within range 14. But we can just disable this ranged weapon here, and he becomes not that big of a threat to us. Right? And so now, that big range 14 blast attack that he had, it's gone. And we don't have to worry too much about it. Now, again, we're not in the best shape, right? I mean, he's in cover, but it's only half cover, and he's pretty close to these guys, so he's probably going to take some hits. But that's why we have an apothecary, right? We can get him protected. The apothecary, he can kind of try to help out a little bit with maybe some Overwatch here, something like this. And we've got our we have our Justicar here that is in a bad spot. We have to watch out for these explosives, but he's not going to be able to get in to do anything else really. So we're going to pull him back into some cover too, and just make sure that he doesn't get shot up too terribly badly. he's got the armor to take care of it all. So there we go. Now we can see that guy. He can't do anything to us too much. Well, okay, he's got his other blast, I guess. But he didn't get his big blast off that he was going to be able to use. And so that's good. He could have done damage to multiple guys, and it could have been quite a lot of damage. He blew up some cover. We took a little bit of damage for that. It's not the worst. We mitigated some damage, and that was the idea, right? It would have been better if he could have done no damage, but, you know, that wasn't really an option with what we had. And so it's what it is. So at any rate, yeah, there you go. You can see he's spraying around a little bit. But all in all, it could have been worse. It could have been worse. So that's the idea. Minimize the damage that you're going to take if you can with critical hits. A lot of the time you can get rid of a weapon. You can get rid of an ability. You can potentially stun an opponent. We'll talk about stunning here in a little bit. But the critical hit can come in clutch in a lot of situations where you're able to take out an ability and basically neuter the bad guy. One more thing about critical hits is that is one of the primary ways that you extract seeds from the enemy. Any critical hit will do, whether it's ranged or melee. That'll get the seed out of it. There are also a couple of other ways to do it. There's the seed extraction skull, which you can just send to extract the seed. The problem is it doesn't work on mechanical targets like this guy. If this guy had a seed, we wouldn't be able to use the extractor skull on him. We'd have to go for the critical hit to get him. And then there's one other ability, the apothecary, if you want to train into it, can get the ability to be able to extract seeds with his melee weapon on any hit, not just a critical hit. But that one is down in the lower right corner of the skill tree, as I recall, and it's a little bit out of the way. It's not necessarily one of the directions you were going to want to take your apothecary in his training. Maybe it is. It depends on your play style and how you use your apothecaries. But it is an ability that it takes a while to get to, and so for the most part, I don't think that's going to come into play too often for you. Most of the time, it's either going to be extractor skulls or critical hits to get those seeds out of there. So that's really it on critical hits. And again, you can get critical hits without using the guaranteed abilities. There are weapons that increase your critical hit percentage. There are abilities that increase your critical hit. It's extra damage. It's abilities to destroy parts of your target and cripple them in those ways. So buffing up your soldiers' abilities to do critical hits is not going to steer you wrong when you're skilling them up either. Tip number 5. Action points are everything in this game. They're extremely, extremely valuable as a resource. And any abilities that you can give your knights that will give you more action points or stop you from having to spend action points are well worth the investment. The more action points that you have, the more you are able to punish the enemy and deliver the Emperor's justice before they are able to retaliate in any meaningful way. So you're going to find abilities that are going to give you these options to give other people action points, and not only give them, but multiply action points, or at least add action points. So one example of this is the Justicar. The Justicar has this ability called Honor the Chapter. Choose a knight at any range. They gain +2 action points. It costs you 1 action point and 2 will points. This can be buffed up as well. I don't think this particular knight has the ability, but he can actually give up to +3 action points and +1 will point for the cost of 1 action point, and I think it's 4 will points to do the warp charge total. And so this is transferring and gaining will points, which is extremely valuable. The battlefield medicine ability, also when you warp charge, it can be increased through the skill tree to also give an extra action point to the person being healed. And I don't think that this one has it, but it is an option in the skill trees. One that's common with the Purgators and even the Justicars is auto reload, and it's a percentage chance and it's an auto, so it only kicks off once per turn. But if you can get your guy to reload his weapon when it's empty for free, that's an action point you don't have to spend doing that, and that's an extra action point you can spend shooting at the enemy. So the auto reloads are really great. Any ability that gives you plus action points when you get like a critical hit, for example, can extend your ability to do more damage. So lots and lots and lots of abilities across the different classes. Give your knights the ability to gain action points. Those abilities are going to be clutch, and the more action points you get to spend in your turn, the more damage you can do to the enemy before they can react. The other way that you can get crits is through executions, and executions are a pretty good way to buff up your ability to gain action points. If you look at these guys, you'll notice up here in their little info area, they've got this little skull here with the number in it. That's how many stun points they have left. When that hits 0, they're stunned, and the next melee attack against them is an automatic critical hit, most of the time with the option to execute the guy, even if they're not completely, going to be completely out of hit points. And if you successfully execute a target, everybody in your group gains +1 action point. And so if you're very careful and your guys are positioned correctly, you can chain some stuff together. It's hard on the more difficult levels because they have a lot of stun, and it's tough to get those stun going without a lot of help. But there are helpers, particularly the apothecary has this iron arm biomancy. Targeted knight, he's got the special servo-skull that lets him do his biomancy. He's at range. Normally this is range 1. But targeted knight at any range, because he's got the skull, to gain +2 stun with melee attacks for 1 turn. Okay, so what we can do is, if we look at this guy, he's got the demon hammer. In fact, he's got a good demon hammer that when he hits warp charge, it does plus bonus to his stun as well. So what we can do is we can give him this iron arm biomancy, just like this. Okay, and then we can get him to where he can stun a target. Oh, he just gained an extra ability. So I don't know if you saw that. So he gained an extra ability point when he used that biomancy. That's one of his skills that he's picked up, is there's a percentage chance that when he gives a biomancy, he gets that action point back. I think the interceptor has one also, that when he teleports, he has a chance to get an action point back. So those are worth looking at as well. But there we go. So that was basically a free buff that we just got. As far as action points goes, it still cost us will points and stuff like that, but it didn't cost him his action point. And so now what we can do is we can start working on seeing if we can get this guy stunned. So if we just hit him just as he is, if we get the crit, we're going to get him down to about 8 or 9 damage, probably, something like that. But let's see what we can do. So if we get here, we're going to force strike this, because he's got that special hammer that does extra. That's going to put him, see how now the skull is yellow and it's got the exclamation point in it? That means he's going to be stunned after this hit. So even if we get the crit, it's not going to kill him. So we're going to do that. Boom. He's stunned, got the yellow skull there, and he's kind of on his knees. So now, if we hit him again, and it doesn't even have to be him that does the hit. In fact, a lot of times, if you're trying to chain these together, it's better to have one of your other knights do that, get that hit, so that he can get in here, he can get the execution, and it's a little graphic most of the time. Okay, so here you see we have the normal things that we have, armor, pierce, and ranged weapons, but because he's stunned, we also have this ability execute here. So if we choose this, okay, he's executed, chopped in half, and there we go. Everybody gets +1 action points. And if we look at him, who hasn't acted yet, he's now got 4 action points. So they do stack beyond the maximum of 3. And so now he's got 4 action points. He's still got 2 left. So we can probably get the execution on this guy here as well. Let's see if we can get this guy too. We're gonna almost get him. Let's do this first. Let's take him. Let's shoot him once, because that'll do a stun.
Firing on target.
And when you're going for executions, going against guys with armor is perfectly fine, because armor doesn't protect them from the stun damage, and it doesn't matter for the execution. So if you've got a guy that's got more armor, he might be the guy you want to go after for your execution, so that you don't accidentally kill him while you're trying to stun him, because that can happen too. So let's just pull back there for a second. This guy here, now if we go here, we're going to get 3 and we force strike it, we're going to get him stunned again. Now you do have to be really, really careful about this too, because this is using up will points that we're not going to really get back because he's not getting the execution. In fact, we might give him the execution this time so that he gets... Yeah, so he's going to get... we could disable his weapon. This happened to be a critical hit. That was just by chance. So we don't want to armor pierce. We could disable his weapon. It doesn't really matter. We can do the +1 stun too. We're going to get it either way. But it stuns him. So now he's stunned. And now we can execute him again with our last action point. Everybody gets another action point. There it is. So you can keep chaining these things together. Now, you'll notice this guy here, he has a skull with a slash through it. So that means he cannot be stunned. You can hit him all day long. You can't stun him. He's mechanical. And so there's nothing that we can really do about that. But it's okay because now we've given ourselves 2 kills basically for free. He's still got 1 action point left. Now he can get up here and he can get the critical. I don't know if he can get, I'm just trying to be careful about how I position him so he doesn't get in the way of anybody else. So we can get it here. I'm not going to spend, he's still got plenty of will points, so we could maybe take the force strike here. But this is a way, like I said, all right, see here we got the armor break. Now, you'll notice if we do the armor break, that's going to apply the damage before, maybe not in this case, I'm not sure about this. But we might as well do that. Oh, we just flat up killed him. It didn't show us exactly what the damage was going to be, but the +4 armor break with the critical hit was enough to just destroy him. So there we go. Everybody is still got action points left, and now there's no defenders left on the bloom tree, and we can take it down at our leisure. And so that's the nice thing about chaining together these kills. Is basically we killed two Marines for free. Really, the third guy went down for free almost too. I mean, our Justicar, he's down to 1 action point left, but he's done a lot of work in this particular round. So those are the kinds of things that you want to look for with the extra action points. Any action points that you gain for doing something that you wouldn't have normally had, or any action points you do not have to spend, such as a free reload, are going to serve you very well. And you want to be considering those types of skills when you're skilling up your knights. Tip number 6 is about being careful about spending your will points and how you manage your will points. If we take a look, we just finished off the Marines, the enemies that were guarding this bloom spawn, and we did it just fine. But if we kind of look at our soldiers here, our Justicar, he's down to 4 will points left. Our Interceptor's down to 1. The Purgatory, he's down to 2, and the Apothecary, he's down to 5. So we're burning up will points pretty fast here, and it's really possible to do that in a hurry with most of these classes. Like your Purgator, it's nothing for him to do a kill zone and then an astral aim, or a kill zone and then a warp charge on his Psy Cannon for the Psychic Onslaught. That'll burn up 5 or 6 will points just that quick. And so you do have to be very careful, because getting them back isn't that easy in most circumstances. The way that you gain will points back, there's actually a few ways. None of them are what I consider to be highly efficient ways necessarily. The first way is by killing things. Pretty much everything that you kill, with the exception of Bloom Spawn, gives you back 1 will point. And the thing you got to be very careful about is you only get 1 will point back per attack, even if your attack kills more than 1 bad guy. Okay, you could kill 14 cultists with an area of effect attack, you still only get 1 will point back. So you do want to be a little bit careful about that. And in fact, depending on the situation, it might be better to use an area of effect attack to soften up a grouped up bunch of targets, and then use individual attacks to take them out, so that you do gain back some will points. Now, your first battle that you're going into in a fight, you can afford to spend a couple of will points, because if you're full, you're full, and gaining back will points at that point is just as useless as not getting any back at all. So if you don't spend any will points and you start getting a bunch of kills, well, that's not necessarily exactly the best use of your will points. And I'm not saying be reckless with your will points, right? But at the same time, if you know you're going to get some back, it's okay to spend a little bit. Breaking armor, the kill zone, like I said, anything that's going to let you do more damage is worth the will points. You just have to be very careful about how many times you do that. And you also have to be careful that if you're going to do that with your Purgator, let's say he's going to put a kill zone out there, you need to make sure that he's going to get a kill or two himself so that he does get some of that willpower back. The second way to get back will points is there is an ability if you're in one of the systems that your prognosticars are viewing and you have researched the ability that every time there's a warp surge, your guys will bring back 1 will point. That one is, it's hit or miss because it's going to depend on a few things. It's going to depend on, number one, have you done the research? Number two, how many prognosticars do you have and how are they positioned in the star maps, and how many planets are they watching over? And number three, are you in a force storm that's going to negate that ability? Sometimes you have to fight in a warp storm. You just have to. It just is one of those things. So that one's okay. Every time the warp surge happens, you get the extra will point back. Third way, you often have abilities that will give you a chance to get a will point back for doing a certain thing. One example is the chaplain has a litany that will allow the entire squad a percentage chance when they warp charge their weapons, or they use a Psybolt, or they use a force strike on their melee weapons. They have a percentage chance to get back 1 will point at that point. Now, most of those abilities, if not all of them, in fact, probably all of them, are auto abilities, which means they'll only work once per turn unless there are other mitigating circumstances that allow it to happen more than once. So even then, it's not a guarantee. And at best, you're getting a free use of that warp charge or whatever. But it's a will point that you won't necessarily have to spend, or that you could afford to activate that warp charge again if you needed to, for instance, without being any worse off than you were the first time you did it. Those are the main ways that you're going to get will points back. There are also a couple of different stratagems that can give you your soldiers back will points. One of them charges one of your soldiers back up to full. Another one gives your entire squad, I think it's 3 will points back. But those are single use per mission, and even then you can't use them in every mission, and you have to research those as well. So the stratagems are good, but they have their problems too. I'll talk about the stratagems in another video. They're not really that relevant to this particular video, but those are kind of the ways that you manage your will points. And again, the big thing, if you got a kill set up ready to go, before you kill, make sure you look and see who needs the will points, and if possible, let the person who really needs the will points get that kill. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the person who has the lowest number of will points. For instance, if you're in a situation where you're, let's say your Justicar, for instance, is down to 1 will point and your Purgator is down to 2, well, you're going to get a will point back, but is it going to do any good to give your Justicar that second will point, or is it better to give your Purgator that 3rd will point so that he can do his his kill zone again, or he can do his charged up astral aim, or whatever. So I mean, it's just a judgment call. Who needs it the most is not necessarily who has the lowest amount. So you want to kind of consider what your next step is going to be and let that soldier get the kill so that they get enough will points to use their abilities as needed for your continuing campaign. Right, tip number 7 is about taking advantage of mobility to increase your squad's effectiveness. Now, mobility comes in a couple of forms. There are different armor suits that can grant you extra speed on your soldiers, so +1, +2 to your movement, whatever. There is the Iron Arm Biomancy, which we've already seen from the Apothecary, which grants +2 speed and +4 crit damage. And then there's teleporting, which we've also already seen with our interceptor. Now I've brought us back to the beginning of that particular mission we've been looking at so far. So we're back at the front of it. We're about ready to engage that first group that we saw the first time. We've got all of our guys here, except that I have subbed out the interceptor for a librarian. Now, Jeric, you just said teleporting is a great thing. It is, and we've seen it already, right? When we did this in, tips 2 and 3, when we attacked this group, you saw how well that the interceptor could get in there with the teleport and then do the teleport strike and hit a whole bunch of guys all at once, and then sit there and break an Overwatch or whatever he needs to do as well. So you saw how well that served the interceptor. But that only helped the interceptor. So I'm going to show you now how you can take that to the next level. Now, any mobility boost is pretty good, right? Especially if you're talking about your ranged guys that have short range weapons. This is especially important if you're running a purifier with his incinerator, because those things are really short range and they do a lot of damage, but they're really short range, and it's kind of tricky sometimes to get them into a position where they can really use them well. So extra speed boost on them is going to go a long way towards getting them into range to use that flamethrower. But the best thing you can do is with the librarian, and the librarian has the ability to teleport as one of his skills, and you can warp charge it to move the entire squad, not just the librarian. And there's no range limit on how far away your squad members have to be or how close they have to be. There's a range limit on how far the librarian can move. So he's still bound by his maximum teleport distance. But you could have, your other guys clear back here, and he could start his teleport from up here, and it wouldn't matter. They'd all end up in the same place. So I'm going to show you that. There's also a stratagem that you can get that does the same thing that you can use once per game. You're probably going to find that much earlier than you will be able to get a hold of a librarian, but it's the same concept. The only thing is, with the stratagem, you can only do it once. The librarian can do it. It costs 5 will points to do the warp charge and the teleport. So I'm going to show you this real quick and show you just exactly how much it's going to level up your ability to do damage here. Now, we've moved our group up. We've detected, in the distance here, we've detected the enemies. So we're going to move up. They're going to do their scramble turn. And in this particular case, I don't need to worry about moving up the other guys either, because the teleport that we're going to use is going to pick them up no matter where they are. So we don't have to be quite as careful this time. Okay, we're going to sit here. We're going to let these guys go through their scramble. They're going to, once again, they're going to set up all their defenses and their overwatches and all the things that they're going to do. And that is perfectly okay. Okay, so now they have done their thing and they are rebuffed and all their overwatches are up and so on. We're all at 3 action points again. So now, if we take a look, we can do the Gate of Infinity, and we can drop our guys right here. And we warp charge that, and we're going to drop our guys right into the center of all of these guys. Now, why is this great? Because we do not have to spend any action points. In fact, our librarian just got back both an action point and a will point for that teleport. We don't have to spend any action points to engage these guys. We're already in it, and we're ready to go. And so now we're pre-buffed. We've got all kinds of stuff going on. We've got our shields are up. We've got 12 action points that we can now use to do what we need to do to these guys. And so what are we going to do? We're going to start off with our... Not him. Not him.
Praise the Emperor. Yes, Commander. Thule.
Here we go. Brother Thule. He's going to start off with his kill zone. And he's going to get everybody except for one here. Warp charge that up. Get rid of all that armor. Or some of that armor anyway. Make them all vulnerable. Then he could even, if we wanted to, he could even set down a... he could set down an area of effect attack. with his Psychic Onslaught, soften everybody up a little bit. Now, again, this is burning up a lot of will points on our first turn, so maybe this isn't our best idea, right? So maybe we don't want to do that. But what we can do, though, is we can still have a little warp speed biomancy here. In fact, somebody who's already got it. I think I put it on him, actually. That was probably not the best thing. So let's do the old... in fact, let's do an Iron Arm. You know what? Let's apply what we've already seen. Okay, we are still in the middle of this fight here. We might as well get some executions, or at least one. Maybe get a few extra action points back. That didn't cost us anything there, because we're set up to do that. So let's take a little hammer shot at this guy with a Force Strike. Let's see if we can get him stunned down. There's one. This one will stun him. Don't even have to Force Strike this one. We'll do the we'll disable his melee weapon just for fun. Okay, now we can have somebody execute him. So we've spent quite a bit with...
Unleash me.
We spent quite a bit with our Apothecary, so maybe we'll let the Apothecary get this execution and get a point back. Again, we're managing our willpower like we talked about. Okay, so he's going to get everybody an extra action point for that one. That's basically a free kill on everybody. Okay, our Librarian, he can come over here. He can break up these... Okay, see here we got the crit, so we get the disable the ranged weapon. Okay, good job. He can come over here. He can... If we do the Force Strike here, we're not quite going to get him. But we should be able to get him anyway. Okay, so that's okay. We detected some guys there. But I mean, you see the difference when we don't have to spend action points to get into the fight. We're already in the fight. And so we've got all these action points here that we can use to take care of everything here. So here we go. We can get our we can just let him stay stunned there for a minute. You know, we can use this. We can let him get this kill. Free up our Librarian. He gets that kill. Okay, now the Librarian is freed up. The Librarian can come down here and get the execution. Okay, here's our execute. Boom, done. And I mean, there's another action point for everybody. You know, it's like we're just in really good shape at this point. Everybody's still got action points. There's only 2 bad guys left. You know, easy kills here. Just easy kills. Okay, to disable his weapon. He's pretty much no threat at this point, even if we don't get him killed, which we're going to. He's down. Okay, you know, we can kill this guy here. Bust up that armor. Shoot him again. Now I have extra armor on this, or extra ammo on this guy, so there you just got the free reload. Remember I talked about action points and in anything you don't have to spend action points on? Well, he just got the free reload, so that was excellent too. All right, so we can get in here. Actually, it's probably better with him if we just shoot. Okay, we can maybe Psybolt this guy.
The enemy is wounded.
Psybolt him again. Maybe not. Maybe we just we got 3 shots left here yet. Now we're gonna only get 2 probably because we have to reload. But you know, we can take the shot. I think we have a extra shot with our Librarian here probably. Yep. Okay. Now the Librarian, like I said, he burned up a lot of his will points, but he has a lot. We've got some pretty good gear on him. We've skilled him up to get some extra, so he can still do that Gate of Infinity twice. So we're in decent shape here. We can go ahead and afford to just take this take this down here, get the kill here, get the action point, and there we go. One round, they didn't get to attack back. We dropped right on top of them, and that is it. They're gone. They didn't even have a chance to attack. That is the power of that teleport, mass teleport, and the Gate of Infinity. And like I said, there's a stratagem that lets you do that too, but you only get to use it once. So you have to be really careful about when you use it. Normally, in this particular instance, you probably wouldn't want to drop on this particular group. It's really effective when you're dropping on a bloom spawn, and especially the last bloom spawn of the mission, where it ends the mission immediately. That way you don't have to necessarily fight all of the guys that are around it. You can just kill the bloom spawn and teleport out of there, and you're done. So when and where you use it is dependent on how many you get, and you know whether you have a librarian with you or not. But you're going to want a librarian. You're probably going to want a couple of librarians in your squads by the time you get to the point where you can get the advanced classes. You're going to want to grab a couple and get both of them, get this Gate of Infinity ability. It is so clutch in a lot of situations. It's just one of the best abilities in the game. So that is mobility and how it can help you not take any damage. Tip number 8 is using Servo-Skulls and what they're good for. Servo-Skulls are excellent tools for you and your Marines, your Knights to use, because they are very flexible. Usually you can get the ability to get more than one of them going at a time, or to be ability to carry more than one. And the best thing about them is all Servo-Skulls are free to use. They don't cost any action points. So if we take a look at our war gear, let's go to our loadout here, and we have a couple of things here. So anytime you can get extra equipment slots, whether that is through skill ups or whether that is through armor with abilities that have extra equipment slots or whatever, that's a good thing, because that just increases the power of your knight right there. And you can put lots of different things in your equipment slots, but it's not always ability. Like this equipment slot here is just equipment only, right? Just passive equipment. So that doesn't really help us, but that frees up your regular war gear slot for a Servo-Skull. And so there's several different kinds. I don't even have them all unlocked here, but we'll go over the ones that we do have here. The first one is the Extractor Servo-Skull. We've talked about this a little bit already, and this is used to extract seeds from organic targets. Now, it does not work against mechanical targets like the Hellbrute or like the Plague Seed Hauler. Anything mechanical, it's not going to work against. But this thing is really, really good in any other circumstance. It's 5 ammo. You can use it 5 times. It's got a range of 15 squares, which is pretty long. And you can just go extract that seed for free. And when you're dealing with, especially the mission that is kill all the Bloom Seed Haulers, you can just pluck that last seed before you even really engage in the fight with the last group. I mean, you'll be engaged already, but you don't even have to go down there and kill the guy for it. You can just send your skull in, take it away from him, and then you can start your 3-turn cooldown before you can teleport out. And we're going to talk about that in just the next couple of tips here too. But very useful to have. You only need it on one of your knights, really. I usually have my apothecary or maybe a librarian or somebody take it, but it really doesn't make that big of a difference. You don't need the extra ammo, so maybe your apothecary isn't the guy you want to have it, but it's a very useful skull. You're going to get it early on. It's one of the earlier things that you can research, and I would recommend that you research it right away when you have access to it. The Medicae skull is the obvious one. This one is a healing skull. This one happens to be tier 2, so it heals 7 points. The tier 1 heals 5 points of damage. But the other thing that it does is it does purify on your knights, which removes all of the negative effects that they might be under, whether that is pinned, hobbled, weakened, blinded, all of those negative things. They're just gone with purify. Plagued is another big one that gets removed. You're going to want to carry these on your guys. You're going to want quite a few of them because, we've been talking about through these tips how you can use offense as your best defense, and you can. and you need to for the most part, but your guys are still going to take damage. All right, it's just going to happen. You're going to make a mistake somewhere, or something's going to come in that you didn't see or that you didn't know about, or it's just going to be you didn't get everybody killed in that first round of combat, and now they get their chance to counterattack and they're going to do some work on you. And your apothecary can heal with his Narthecium. If we go look at the apothecary real quick here, he can heal with his Narthecium. He's got the ability to do that, but it does cost the healing ability does cost willpower, which he may not have. You may not have any willpower at some point in your game, and if or in your mission, I should say. And if you need to heal at that point, he's not going to be able to do it. And so you're going to need to have those Servo-Skulls. You'll notice that the apothecary also gets the ability in the skill tree to gain an extra war gear slot specifically for Servo-Skulls. And these two abilities right here give him, each one of those is an extra ammo use, or an extra use of each Servo-Skull that he equips. And then this last one up here is a special skull, the Apothecarian skull, that only the apothecaries can get. And this is the one that allows them to use their biomancies at range instead of having to be adjacent. So this is a good place. I'm not going to go too deep into the building of characters. I'll do separate videos on each one of the classes, but this is a good one to skill into to gain those extras. You can also get extra uses of skulls as just a natural ability on your knights. In fact, I think I have one. I think Brother Storm has that, if I recall correctly. Yep. So you can see his ability here. Over here, it's the second one there. Says that knight gains +1 use for equipped Servo-Skulls. That's a really nice ability to have. So generally speaking, I will usually send in Brother Storm with Medicae skulls as well, so that he can help out with the healing of the squad when they take damage. And then you can also get it as part of your armor. There are different armor suits that have different abilities as well. Some of those will grant an extra war gear slot, or grant extra uses of things like grenades or Servo-Skulls or whatever. So keep your eye open at the armory when you complete each mission. If you happen to see a decent suit of armor that has or can be upgraded to have extra Servo-Skulls, that might be something you might be interested in as well. Getting back to the different types of skulls here, we can take a look. We just talked about the Medicae skull. There's also the Hailer skull. This guy's interesting and it's pretty useful. He's got a range of 10 and an area of 3, and he'll inflict enraged on anybody in that area. What that does is that causes the enraged combatants to try to attack the skull itself in melee. They won't even shoot at it. They'll go to melee with it. It's got 15 health, so it's pretty tanky. I mean, they're going to get it if, you know, enough guys get on it, but only so many guys can even get around it. And so even then, it's good. Now, that only lasts for 1 turn, and it can be resisted. Anything that's got, 100% resistance or whatever is probably not going to be affected by this. But it's still, anytime you can get enemies shooting at something that is not your knights, that's a good thing. And this skull does a really nice job of that, especially on some of the lower level, like your Plague Marines and your cultists and things that don't have as high of resists. Towards the end of the game, especially on the harder difficulties, you're going to be running into a lot of things that have 100% resist, and that's just how it is. It's whatever. But the Hailer skull can save your guys a lot of damage too. These you're going to find through the mission rewards as equipment. So if you want these in the armor, you're going to want to be upping your equipment tier that you get from completing missions. The last one that we've got here that I know about is the Disruptor Skull. This is another pretty good one. It's range 10, does 4 damage, and it's armor piercing. Now remember, no action points to let this guy go. This is twice per mission. You can just do 4 damage to something armor piercing as long as it's within range 10. But the other thing about it is it disrupts them and they cannot trigger their auto abilities. And this is even more valuable than the damage. What this will do is this will stop enemies from doing things like overwatches, suppressions, parries. It can be resisted too. So again, if you're up against something that's, got 100% resistances, pretty good odds they're not going to be disrupted by it, but they'll still take the damage, so that's even good there. but being able to disrupt things is never a bad thing. Suppressions in the game, especially early on when you're dealing with the cultists, they have those weapons that they can do suppress and fire from like range 14 or 15. It's really annoying because it does a lot of damage to your guy. So if you can disrupt them and stop that from happening, that's going to save you a lot of trouble. A grenade with knockback will do the trick on something like that too. But this one doesn't cost any action points, so you're still good to go for going after that guy after you've got him disrupted. But the general idea behind them is they're really good, especially if you can get guys that have extra ammo for them, because they are free to use. You're going to take damage, so you're going to want some healing skulls. You're probably going to want the extractor skull because it just makes collecting seeds so easy. And then these last two and some others, I'm sure. Like I said, I don't have them all, but they're just clutch in a lot of different situations, and they'll get you out of a lot of trouble. So use them, love them. If you can get more of them, more slots for them and more ammo for them, not a bad idea, especially on your apothecary. Your apothecary is probably going to end up at some point wanting that apothecarian skull if you're training them into biomancies, which I do suggest because they're very useful on your melee guys. And so it's probably going to take up one of his skull slots, but even then he can carry extra medical skulls or whatever he needs to carry. So highly recommend using them. There's a lot of good war gear, but skulls I think are one of the better options in most situations. Tip number 9, you are going to end up bringing wounded soldiers into fights. It's inevitable. You will. They're going to take damage. You're not going to necessarily be able to heal it all, even if you're packing a bunch of Servo-Skulls. It's very rare, at least on the higher level difficulties, to get through a mission without taking any damage at all. The amount of time that your knights are healing can be mitigated through some upgrades to the ship, but the fact of the matter is once they're hurt, it takes them quite a while to not be hurt anymore. So if we take a look here, and you can see most of my guys are hurt for at least a little while. A couple of them are just about healed up at this point, but I'm on the legendary difficulty here in this as well. But you're gonna be taking wounded guys into combat, and if you follow all the rest of these tips that we've had so far, it's going to do a lot to mitigate the damage you're taking. And the damage that you do take, you can probably heal off with some of your Medicae skulls or with your Apothecarian and his healing ability. But still, at the end of the day, your guys are going to get hurt. And so it's just a fact of life. Don't worry about bringing in your wounded soldiers into these fights. Even these guys that are wounded for like a long time. This guy's 62 days he's wounded. I bring him into a lot of fights. This is my one librarian that I have. He went on almost all of my missions once I had him in my squad in my legendary difficulty campaign, and that's what we're looking at here. So he's just always hurt, but you know what? It's -6 health, and if you just follow the rest of these tips, it's not that big of a deal most of the time. One of the things that you do want to do, if you can, is you want to always have 4 of your knights that are not hurt. Now, in this particular situation, I have only 3, and that's because I actually had a mission where my knights had to go do something on the strategic map, and so they all came back hurt afterwards, so they're still healing from that. But generally, I like to keep at least 4 knights that are blue ready to go for battle, so that if you do run into one of those strategic map things, whether it's a Death Guard cruiser or whatever, and you need to send the Marines in to deal with the situation, you have 4 that are ready to go, and they can go take care of it, and the edict doesn't take any extra damage or anything like that. So do try to keep several ready to go. It's also worth noting, and I didn't know this until right before the very end mission, but the last mission of the campaign, you actually need 8 knights. And so you're going to want at least 8 knights, preferably 8 level 9 knights if you can manage it for that last mission. So be thinking about that as you're going through your campaign as well. Like I said, I didn't find out about that until right up near the end, And it's not ever alluded to anywhere that I saw within the campaign that you're going to ever be able to take more than 4 nights on a mission. And so, yeah, rotate your guys around, make sure that everybody's getting some experience. But again, try to keep 4 battle ready at all times if you can. You'll have a lot more options to deal with strategic layer events. I'm going to do a whole other video on the strategic layer. This is mostly tactical combat tips and tricks. But again, this kind of goes towards that. Don't be afraid to field your wounded knights. They're going to be fine. Tip number 10 is don't take fights that you don't have to take. And this harkens back to the idea of not subjecting your knights to damage that they don't have to take. It also has to do with, by the end of these missions, you're probably going to be low on resources. This particular mission that we're in right now is a kill all the seed carriers mission. And this one is particularly nasty in the end, because as soon as you kill, or as soon as you extract or kill these guys with these seeds, all of the remaining reinforcements that the enemies get are going to come in all at the same time. So I had just finished up the 3rd group of the 4 here, and the warp surge happened and this rift opened, so I didn't get out of combat actions, unfortunately. So we're still in combat rounds. We didn't get our chance to reload and stuff like that, but that's okay, because this is the last fight we really have to take. And our mission is not to kill all these guys. Our mission is to extract these seeds and get rid of the seeds. So there's no reason really for us to stick around and fight everybody else. All we need to do is get the seeds, and then we can start falling back and wait for our extraction 3 turns later. And so that's what we're after here. So the interceptor has 1 action point left. The librarian has 1 action point and 5 will points left, so he's got enough to teleport everybody. I like to save, in this mission especially, I like to save enough will points on the librarian, or still have the Gate of Infinity card available at the end of this mission, so that we can fall back and we can get away from some of these reinforcements before they become a real problem and get us surrounded. So what we're going to do is exactly that. We're going to try and extract this seed right here. This guy's mechanical, so we have to get it by a critical hit. Also, there's 2 seeds, so we wouldn't be able to use the extractor skulls anyway for both of them. So we're going to do a force strike here. That gives us a 95% chance to hit the crit, I should say. There it is. We're going to extract the seed and inflict crazed on this guy. That's 1 seed down. Okay. He's got another action point, but we're going to hold up for just a second here. We're going to use the extractor skull on the 2nd guy over here for no action points. This is just a free thing that we're going to do. We'll take that seed. There we go.
Trust your men have preserved some samples for my study. Do return them to the edict at once.
Okay, so now, unfortunately, we're going to start getting a whole bunch of reinforcements. They're going to get 3 more groups of reinforcements. There's 1. Here's number 2. Here's number 3. Basically right on top of everybody else here. So those guys are all going to come in next turn. Now again, we don't have to fight these guys. It's not necessary. So we can start thinking about falling back. And if we start falling back here, for instance, that's going to put us in a nice position where we can hunker down, grab some cover, and deal with maybe a turn of having to fight after we get a chance to buff up with our shields and stuff like that. So now everything's done. We don't have to kill anybody else here, and we can use our librarian and his Gate of Infinity to get us the heck out of here. Warp charge that up, move the whole group. That's going to extract our interceptor out of trouble there too. Okay, he just got a new action point from that.
I am here to serve.
Let's get the interceptor back here into full cover.
I am with you.
And basically we're doing the same thing with all of these guys. We're just falling back, getting cover, getting out of trouble. Nobody has a ton of action points left, but those who can move farther back are going to move farther back. So we're going to be able to get to here. I'm going to put him down here, and I'm going to put his shield up. since that doesn't cost us any will points. Okay, so now, as you can see, we're pretty safe, mostly, from who we were after already, previously. Those guys are all melee, so they're not going to get to us this turn. And everything is fine. We don't have to fight these guys. We can just keep falling back for 2 more turns, and everything's fine. Now, the purists among you might think, well, the Grey Knights would never fall back from a fight. Maybe that's true, maybe that's not true. But the truth of the matter is, the mission is over. Now we're just waiting for extraction. And our mission wasn't to kill all the cultists, because they have basically an unlimited supply of them. We're not in the business of trying to wipe out everybody. We're in the business of trying to get this this plague stopped. And in order to do that, we need to have healthy knights. So I don't think it's too big of a deal, even from a purist's perspective, to have your knights fall back from these fights that they don't really need to take. So you can kind of see how it's going now. Everything's fine. You know, we're going to just keep falling back. Everything's going to be great. He did get hobbled a little bit, but you know what? We can take care of that with a little medical skull, and he can get healed up at the same time. That'll also remove hobbled from him. And he's back up to fighting trim. Now this happens also in another mission, not this scenario, but the same idea can be applied to another mission that comes through here. And that is the mission where you have to kill the bloom spreader, which is the really big bloom spawn that is going to launch seeds into the, you know, next systems nearby. And so what you can do with those is there's 3 things to it. There's the bloom spreader itself, and then there are a bunch of other bloom spawn around it. And for each of the major bloom spawn, the spreader gains extra armor. Okay, so it's plus 5 armor for each spreader or each bloom spawn that's left, and that's not that big of a deal, to be honest. Now, those are timed missions. You only have so many turns to get those missions done, and you can extend the time. That was interesting. You can extend the time. Oh, he was crazed. That's why he did that. You can extend the time on those missions by closing the vents. But I have found, generally speaking, unless it's exactly in your path to get to the bloom spreader, it's generally not worth it to stop and kill the bloom spawns. It takes too long, and it takes too many of your resources, and it's much better to just take care of the bloom spreader itself. Even if it's got 15 armor or 20 armor or whatever it's got, you can break the armor. By the time you're in those bloom spreader missions, you're going to have abilities that will break armor, and it's not that big of a deal. So again, that falls under don't take the fights you don't have to take. Just bypass all those bloom spawns. It'll be just fine. And you can get those missions done reasonably quickly. So that's the idea. I'm not going to finish this out necessarily, because you can see what needs to happen. We just keep falling back this direction, get away from everybody. We'll take a few hits. We'll take a little bit of damage probably in this last turn, and our knights will be wounded, but not nearly as wounded as we tried to stay and fight all of that stuff that was coming at us. We had the Hellbrute. We had 2 of those big spreader guys, the flying ones, and so it's just not a good situation to stay and fight. So anyway, that's going to do it for my top 10 tips here. If you've enjoyed this, do me a big favor, hit that like button and hit that subscribe button too if you haven't already, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.